early on, I think eventually I was like, okay, I'm going to give him some of whatever. As soon as I did that, he was like, hi, daddy. And he started giggling in this almost like evil, like
maniacal.
Yeah. And I was just like, wow, he totally
played me.
he totally knows what he's doing.
You have fallen for my evil plan.
Exactly.
Yep.
Welcome to the Empowering Choices podcast. My name is Joshua.
I want goldfish.
Don't have a meltdown.
Too late.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm Erik, by the way.
And Lucas.
I like goldfish too, but that's not what I'd throw a tantrum over.
Yeah.
I
So
don't really think goldfish are worth tantrum.
Well-
And, I'm in my 30s, obviously. So
that's what's happening at our house.
If it was jelly beans, I might.
if it was just
Yes. So
this podcast is brought to you by Josh's child.
yes, by my personal life here, we are.
Give us the background.
Okay, so we are like 2 years and 3 or 4 months here of age, and basically we are
You or your son?
Good for your
not
age.
me. Yes.
Oh, man,
We're both
Josh.
just like on it.
Baby boss right here.
Yes. So basically, we are starting to get to the age where I used to could be watching TV, and then I could just change something, and he just he's fine. Now there could be something, and that change of what's on TV could become just a
tantrum or a
freak out.
meltdown?
Yeah. It could be here's your dinner. It's a toast with some avocado and some fruit, and
You're feeding your child avocado toast.
want
That's your first problem.
Well, that's what my wife came up with, but I want goldfish. And
I
then,
want goldfish.
Well, he wants
I
goldfish.
think the first problem in this whole scenario is you taught him how to talk.
Probably.
How dare you?
Probably.
Could you not teach it? Can you imagine how hard it would be to teach a child
Yeah.
not to talk?
And so now we're getting to this point where all of a sudden a very simple thing has turned into the very dramatic, sometimes he sounds like he's having a medical emergency.
Oh, gosh,
starts
right.
coughing and all this. But
Oh, right. They scream so loud they start like coughing
Yeah.
and like nearly
And
throwing up.
We're just
Yeah.
getting the dramatic, like the other day over what was on the TV. It became he literally threw himself down on the ground.
Right.
And so I have
You don't
been.
have to teach kids how to do that. They just know
Yeah,
instinctively
they're-
how to
yeah.
just sprawl on the floor and
And it's
just.
very dramatic. If
yeah.
you didn't know better, you would literally think they were in physical pain.
Yep.
Or like I
The
told my
kicking and screaming tantrum doesn't look like physical pain to me. It's the across
Yeah.
the house, Mom, and you swear the like legs caught in a blender or something,
Right.
and then it's like, I lost my elephant.
yeah.
That's my house.
Yeah. And like I told my wife, I said, listen, I know you haven't been home all day. You just got home. He is completely fed. I know he's acting.
Don't
like
let
he
him
is
deceive you.
starving. And
So, of the things that you can do to reduce tantrums and meltdowns, it is working with your partner. So
Yes.
that's obviously
So
a
in
key
the
feature.
manual,
So we're just highlighting that for the audience.
Right. Yeah. I'm
not saying to you, but just
Right.
highlighting
But
it
yeah.
for the audience.
I'm letting
you're
her
doing
know.
that part. It's teamwork.
Right. So
One of those pieces.
Yay, good.
yeah. So there's that. So then I have been testing different methodologies. So I tried some just let's ignore it and see if it goes away, which has maybe worked a few times, but for the most part, he keeps going longer than I would want. But maybe that's just my
Well, yeah,
impatience.
that's at all.
Yeah,
Longer than I would want is at all.
true. And then I have done distraction, which does tend to
Good
work
tool.
a decent amount
Good
of
tool.
times. And so all of a
Just
sudden,
complete non sequitur. Like,
Yeah.
do you see that plane up there?
yeah.
It's just like keep that in your back pocket.
Right.
It is way more useful than I ever
And
thought.
I have found the whole like kicking it up a notch. And so I will be like, whoa, is that your blue monster truck? And then he'll be like, he's
the distraction?
Yeah, and looking. I'm like, no, that's the yellow one. And then he'll go over and now
Right.
and then that
No,
can-
it's a green one.
right. And that can
Yep.
sometimes lead to
Yeah.
To
that's
that.
an absolutely useful skill.
and fortunately this hasn't happened big time in public yet, but I know
It
we're headed there. So
It could be.
Yeah.
And it might happen a couple of times.
Yeah.
I know that when I was in grade school, I tested out, let's throw a tantrum in the store and see if my parents will cave and buy me the thing to shut me up.
So very literally who's the guy? Siegel. Dr.
Yes.
Dr.
Yeah.
Siegel.
Yes.
Don't negotiate with terrorists.
Correct.
You knew
And-
you were a terrorist.
Oh, and I knew by the look on my dad's face, and when he was saying shopping trip over, I was not going to get the thing I wanted, and I was going to get the thing I most didn't want,
The belt.
which would have been spanking, and I did, and
I did.
That did help me to understand that definitely in the store this is never going to work.
Yeah.
With your son at his age, because what you have to understand is what is a tantrum.
Yeah.
A tantrum is a child's way of trying to gain the power in the situation to get what they want. They know that the adults from a very early age control the world, and all they have to do is control one.
Right.
That's why teamwork is so important.
Right.
They can control one adult or one person older than themselves. So if they can't control the parents, but a sibling will want to shut them up, they now are in control of something in their world. I don't have a problem with a child that is just trying to get their own way.
Yeah.
It's a part of how we learn that the world does not revolve around us, and it's a way that we learn, hey, the world doesn't work like that. You just can't have your own way all the time.
And then the adults have to be stubborn enough to follow through on that like line of reasoning.
Stubborn, or they have to have a longevity, or they have to have a teamwork. In Super Nanny, the toughest battle that I ever saw Joe come up against was a child about 6 years old who would do these tantrums, and he did them everywhere, and he got his way oh so much.
That being why they kept happening.
Yes, and so they instituted timeout area. They instituted a timeout, and then they instituted.
It's her favorite intervention, isn't it?
It is Joe's favorite intervention.
Like
it's a very powerful intervention. And just to throw a plug in, because today calling it a tantrum has become so, a timeout has become so overused as a term that in and of itself can be triggering to a kid.
Oh, okay, sure.
My favorite phrase that when I had kids of various ages was, "Just have a seat."
Yeah.
Just I get it. Just have a seat. And
Would that have worked for the 6-year-old in her show?
Yes. It could have worked because you just keep directing them back to, no, just have a seat.
Well,
and so
keep directing them back to is the key part of how
the key
Joe
part.
does this intervention.
I believe that because the kid would leave the timeout area, every 10 times of an adult taking them back to the timeout area, they would then switch off to a different adult.
Oh, okay.
So you had a fresh person in every 10 times. 123 times they had to take that boy back to the timeout area.
They were counting iterations.
Yes.
I wonder how long it was on the clock.
And that's a really good question. I'm going to guess it was at least a couple hours. At the end of that, that's kind of what that boy's face looked like.
The boy's face.
Yeah, you could just see he's like, this could go on forever. And that's the part where he needed to get to, is that he can't outlast the parents, the adults in his life.
Yeah.
If you've gifted your child with a strong will and or a high intelligence to go with that, and whichever parent has, provided, and, I had 2 little sisters that both parents provided that for them, you then have to understand that was your gift to them. And now you've got to use your own in order to be able to help them tame theirs.
Yeah.
So what do? You're doing distractions, and now that we know kind of what a tantrum is, it's a child's way of trying to get their own way. You also have to understand that there's no quick fix for these things. There are sometimes tools or interventions that you'll do and they'll be like, bam, that worked.
Yeah.
But that's not the general piece of parenting.
You were snapping, and Indy looked up to be like, what
Did
do you
he?
want? Yeah. His
right.
nose popped over the table.
That's too funny. The quick fix, so to speak, if I can use that term, is consistency. So
that's the quickest fix.
Quickest fix. Yeah. Keep doing the things that are working, but then you might need to make adaptations. So let's say your son is getting louder because you didn't turn the TV. You might need to turn the TV up a little bit. That way you can hear it. Or you might need to remove your son and, put him in his bed, while he's doing and throwing his fit. Or you might need to have AirPods. that help you to kind of block out the screaming.
And this is the like ignoring skill
That's
that you're
ignoring.
highlighting right now.
You may want to find also, equally creative ways of doing distractions. You had some great examples there. When I was in a treatment center and I had teenagers who were in the timeout room, I knew every single one of my kids what their passionate love in the world was.
Yeah.
So in my staff box, I had a full set of Calvin and Hobbes books. I had snowboarding, skiing magazines. Right. I had a poetry, Silverstein's, Where the Sidewalk Ends. And depending on which one was in the timeout room is which book I'd pull out and start reading to where they could see it.
Yeah.
And I even had some teenagers that, they would see that and then they would just start to calm themselves down. And then I'd see a hand that would go up, or I'd hear a voice that would say, Erik, I know you're not really reading that.
They weren't stupid.
Oh, no. And I never expected them to be.
Yeah.
But it came to the snowboarding and the skiing.
Yeah.
They're like, I know you're not really reading that. But when I'm doing better, can I? That looks like a newest issue. I'm like, oh, look at that. It is. Where did that come from?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. How will I know you're doing better?
Right.
And because tantrums naturally start at the age where your kid is at.
Yeah.
But if they don't get curved, that doesn't mean they're not still happening well into a person's 60s or 70s.
Oh, gosh.
They just don't look like possibly the flailing on the ground.
Right. And one of the things I had to kind of remind myself is sometimes you would literally think he hasn't eaten all day or something.
Yeah.
And it's so over the top. And you wonder, like, is he actually in pain? Is this like, and then
Fortunately, you have a medical professional in your house who can assess such things.
True. And early on, I think eventually I was like, okay, I'm going to give him some of whatever. As soon as I did that, he was like, hi, daddy. And he started giggling in this almost like evil, like
maniacal.
Yeah. And I was just like, wow, he totally
played.
He totally knows what he's doing.
You have fallen for my evil plan.
Exactly.
You can just see it all over his face. That's hilarious.
Yeah, like he's not old enough yet to know, like, oh, I shouldn't show him. But,
his deception skills are not there.
But I was just like, wow, yeah, kid totally played me. I think like
that's almost worth like one or two repetitions to just be like,
true.
So there's a great saying that I heard out there from a broadcaster. His wife came up with it, and the saying goes like this: "You're either winning or you're learning." And I'm like, I like that. That is great. I got to find his name again so I can give him credit for it, give his wife credit for it. But that's just it. You're learning.
Yeah.
You're learning about your child. I had a mom and a daughter who come to see me, and she's 4, and she would do her certain things and her certain willfulness and her certain resistiveness. And, because mom didn't always want her sitting right up next to her just because she's a little furnace. And
you're hot. Get off.
Some days mom's like, I just can't do this right now.
Yeah.
But she would work her way up there on the couch, and mom's just fine, and she'd do that. And then she would just kind of have whatever she had, or she'd fold her arms, and she'd just turn and look at me, and you'd just go, And I'm like, I got you, girl.
Yeah,
I see what you're doing. It's
right.
that same kind of maniacal, look. I won.
Yeah.
And I mean, she's been showing me that since she was 2.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is that it's about winning the power. And what the child has to learn is that that's not the power that you need to have. You have power, and as a parent, I'm going to teach you how you have power through empowerment, through choices, through negotiation, through asking, through talking to me.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean I'm always going to say yes, and that's one of the things that you have to learn in this piece.
Right. And I think like one of the things that's fascinating, if you go out and you just start Googling and you find stuff, you're going to find everything from 100% always ignore your child to people who literally, it almost sounds like you as a parent need to go in timeout because you need to give them everything, you know, the very, and so I think
We've seen the commercials of the out of control kids and the
Right.
parents just sitting on their couch like defeated.
Right.
Like what do we get ourselves into?
Totally. And I think one of the things that we talk about a lot on this podcast that I've had to help remind myself is that every situation is different. Every child is different. Every child is at a different age, and you have all these tools. And so like one of the things I found myself doing early on a few times was like, I'm trying to negotiate with a 2-year-old and I'm like, okay, well, we're going to watch the monster truck one more time. And then daddy's going to use the TV. Well, the reality is a 2-year-old does not comprehend that. Oh, okay, great. You know, so he's very happy until now it's time for daddy to watch the TV. And he is long don't care about what any agreement we made.
Right.
Why?
He's just like,
The question is why? And the answer is we know through CAT scans and other technology that 0 to 18, the thinking is based in the back of the brain.
it's
In the
coming more
emotional-
online, but yeah.
But it's in the emotional center of the brain.
Right.
Okay, so when you hit 18 to 22, it begins to shift from the back of the brain to the front of the brain, which is the logic orientation.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, because there have been people who are like, oh, you haven't met my so-and-so adult in my life. They're totally still in the back of the brain thinking.
Sure.
I'm not saying that some people as adults are not more emotional in their thinking and less logical or vice versa. But we know every human being goes through that shift to whatever that degree is and leaves them as the slice they're going to be. I'm going to say they were probably that slice, before that shift happened, if they're more emotional.
Right.
And that's great. But negotiation is not how they think in a rational, reasonable way unless it feels like they're getting their way. Then they'll negotiate with you. If not, you have to understand the tantrum is a negotiation.
Well, it's a tactic.
It's a tactic of negotiation to get them what they want.
It's more like intimidation. Like, I'll scream if you don't give me what I want.
Right. These are different tactics, but they're not from the rational logical, which is why a lot of people look at it and go, what do I do with that?
Right.
So another technique is that you have to get comfortable, especially men, with emotions. You have to get comfortable that the tantrum is not going to kill your child. It may be unsafe in certain ways because some children will really throw themselves against hard objects. And so you have to kind of have some forethinking.
Yeah.
I have some parents who have put, different, like the pool noodle things on edges of things that they've seen their kids go for. Because again, that logical part is not going to go, oh, I could crack my skull and bleed to death. Oh, maybe that wouldn't be worth it. No, they're going through the tantrum. They're not understanding the different degrees of force and then the different impact of different solid objects. I mean, this is more physics type stuff and reality. So keeping them safe is kind of a priority, but that doesn't mean give them what they want.
Right.
No.
That can mean put them in different places that they're going to be safe as they do that tantrum.
Right. And I think some of that's also where, as a parent, you have to be comfortable understanding that sometimes you are going to have to make your child do things that they don't want to do. And that's part of
things they don't want to
parenting.
do all the time.
Right.
That's just part of the world.
Yeah. And like for us, a constant struggle has been brushing teeth. He does not want to brush the teeth. You would think that the world was ending, and we literally have to strap him down, hold his arms, hold him down. It's a whole ordeal. But my wife the other day was doing an IV for a child who was having to be sedated to have dental things. She talked to the pediatric dentist and just said, we strap our child down every night. And I guess this is part of why you do that, so you can avoid some of these things. And that pediatric dentist was like, I had to do that until my kids were like 5 years old. But
So they were sedating a child dental patient because the child dental patient wouldn't have cooperated otherwise? Is that the...
Yeah, basically when they're so little, they got to do that. And then you don't know why somebody's in there, but obviously a lot of it can be because a parent can go, wow, this isn't worth the struggle. We're just not going to try to brush
And then
these
they go to
teeth
the
every
dentist
night.
and,
And then they get all these
hell breaks
cavities
loose.
as a very young child. And then it's a worse situation.
So you're not necessarily talking about the kid coming into the dentist was going to be bad for the dentist, but
They're
if
just
the
too
parents
little.
didn't brush the
Yeah.
teeth,
Yeah.
then they caused reasons
Right.
to have them to have to go to
Yeah.
the dentist. But then the dentist was like, yeah, me too.
Exactly.
Yeah, they had to do that with their kids.
And so, and that's also what our pediatrician has said. Basically, she said, I have 2 rules. I mean, obviously there's more, but basically, if you're going to walk across the street, it's non-negotiable. We're going to hold hands, and I'm going to keep you safe. And also, you're going to brush your teeth at night. Just the idea that she's
Those things are happening. They're
Right.
non-negotiable.
right.
There are non-negotiable pieces, and kids are not going to understand them.
Yeah.
And in the manual, we talk about, using stronger, louder tones for some of those non-negotiable things. Like my kid is running to the street and they're going to get killed. Stop.
Yeah.
Stop.
Yes.
Stop.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
you
not-
don't want to do it. It's just going to create a really bad situation you're probably never going to recover from. And so stronger tones are meant to get a child's attention quickly, especially in a dangerous, unsafe situation.
Right.
And it's just a part of the reality. Your child will be hurt and or killed if that's not the case at times.
Yeah. And I've also, and that's the reason why some of this very gentle, some of these articles that I've read that would be in the gentle parenting side.
I was just going to say, I think there's a
don't-
title there, yeah.
Yeah, don't fully pan out, because there are plenty of situations where you need to be quick and loud and have action. And so that's a very interesting thing. One of the other things that I was just kind of thinking about as I was reading some things, we have the coloring book for this, which has emotions. How much do we work on? One of the things I've tried to work on is sometimes I don't know what the problem is, and I'm trying to figure out, is it a TV problem or is it like a legitimate medical problem? And we have had, like, one night he woke up and he did have a medical problem, and I'm like, are you hungry? Yes. Is your mouth hurt? Yes. Does your tummy hurt? Yes. And it was like
yes to everything.
Yes to
every
everything.
question.
And we were figuring that out. But some of the things that I was reading talked about basically helping kids understand their emotions and I'm hungry, I'm whatever, so that you can identify those things. Is that just something that basically you should just start as soon as possible, helping? And then even with teenagers, I assume some will they'll shut down and they won't tell you. Like,
There's a lot that you just asked
I know.
there.
20 questions.
Pick one.
Yeah.
I had a parent who said, I want to bring my 5-year-old in. We've talked about this a little bit before.
Yeah.
Whenever she feels a big emotion, good or bad, it overwhelms her. She runs someplace in a 3,200 square foot home and hides.
Oh, wow.
And it's getting harder and harder to find her. We're afraid.
Because of the skills that she's gaining skills in hiding.
In hiding. She can feel, but she doesn't know how to express. So and a part of this that you have to be really careful with is there's a lot of information out there that says all these different things.
Right.
In theory, are those things good? Yes. How do human beings think, though? 0 to 18, very emotionally.
There's lots of theories that make sense on paper that
Right.
fall apart when exposed to the real world.
Well,
Yeah.
but if the environment doesn't express its emotions, if the parents don't know how to state emotions, how
Right.
we're feeling, and how to work through them and how to talk about them, you're going to have a really hard time getting to where that article said is good to begin to train kids or help kids to understand. That's an awareness.
Yeah.
Part of the play therapy that we do, some of my kids want their parents to be a part of that. And after 6 or 7 months, I've had parents say, I had no idea the feelings that were going on under the current of me. I am beginning
the adult.
parent, yes, is saying that. I was in a mood, but I didn't know why. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what I was feeling. I didn't know you could feel more than one emotion at a time. I didn't know what was affecting me.
Again, another plug for Inside Out. Go
Yeah,
watch it. Go
and
watch it now.
Inside Out's a great movie to help see those things. And so, answer to your question theoretically is yes. However, a part of, like with your son, because you have to know your child,
Right.
And so, like when my son was refusing to do work in school in preschool, in kindergarten and basically faking the teachers that he couldn't do it. And I'm going, oh, yes, you can.
Leaning on that, I have a disability,
Yes.
therefore I can't.
Right. And so we're working in the evening on his colors, and I can tell by the answers he's giving me, he just doesn't want to do it.
Yeah.
And so because I know him, I know that this is a battle we're going to have to do at this moment, and I have to be able to win. And it will be fundamental for everything for him moving forward. Knowing him is knowing how to be able to approach and win that battle. And I had various tools that I could use and work with. With him, he needed to understand for his personhood that I was in the game as long as it took. And so I let him know, I can do this all night. I can call in sick tomorrow at work. We can continue this. I can hold you home from school. We can continue this. This will happen. For him, that has always been a piece that has been important in his learning and in his growing up. And so once he understood that he didn't have the power over that part, now he's much more engaged at some point. He's choosing, I will be engaged. I one day, when he was in high school, I actually put his left hand in timeout, but that would be for a different podcast. And the logic that went around with that was to help him understand he's got to get control of his behavior. But the battle that I won when I'm teaching him his colors is what I was working off of when he's in high school, and he's understanding I mean what I say and I say what I mean.
Right.
And so consistency is, oh yeah, Dad can be here for days. We've been through this. Like I never actually had to be there for days, but in his mind, I could be there for days.
And I think that the thing that we're talking about too, as we had mentioned it before, is the behavior calculated on the child's part? And you're expressing a situation where like, yeah, he's just not wanting to, or are they at a point?
But I had to know him to know that.
No, yeah. And then the other side is, are they emotionally overwhelmed or genuinely hungry or physiologically tired or sick?
Yeah.
And then you use a different set of interventions, namely address the genuine problem.
Right.
Because if you tell your sick kid, I'm going to be here for days, and they literally have like a fever or something.
Right.
So like those are the two, like what is a tantrum, right? Is it calculated or are they emotionally overwhelmed?
One of our counselors was telling us the other day that she ran into a situation with a 5-year-old, and he basically threw a tantrum in session, and then she ended the session, and she'd never had that situation before. She, then went into session with one of his siblings and finished that session and came back and said, okay, maybe we could try that again if, he seems that he could do that. And the very first thing she thought of is, hey, I've got a bag of chips here. Would you like a bag of chips? And he said yes. And so he began to eat the bag of chips, and he began to talk to her about his feelings, about his day, about, he's sitting there. She goes, he talked more than he ever has before. And my first thought is he hypoglycemic or just hungry? I mean, Betty White's commercials, I'm like going, I think you need to meet that kid with a bag of chips at the beginning of every session. And she goes, well, the last time he kind of threw a tantrum, he had snacks with him, although he threw them. And I'm like, well, throwing them means you didn't eat them. And therefore, maybe he was that same way. Maybe he needed to have eaten the snacks. And maybe he doesn't like those snacks.
Right.
Because he ate what you provided and liked it and was different. And so I think, and these are the things, because, my son, he's my wife's second cousin. We've had him since he was 4. His mom used different drugs in utero. So he has fetal drug effect. He has deformities throughout his body, inside of his body. And one of the things he struggles with is a bowel that would twist. That brings about...
If you don't know what that means, it's bad.
It's really bad. But when a bowel is beginning to twist, You can have the person can be irritable, they can be angry, they can be set off very easily
Because there's a medical
discomfort piece that's happening, and it's affecting the whole body. And that's why I'm saying these are tools and springboards. So your greatest tool is make sure you know your kid.
That would be our fundamental.
Do things with them so that you're learning. Because I've seen this happen. I've seen adults with their adult parent and the adult child, and the adult child got confronted with something, and the mom looked at the child and went, "Oh my God, you're lying. You've been lying to me about this whole thing." And she knew her daughter that well. And she got caught. And so the knowing of your child is something that's going to be there for, your entire life with them, but it will help you in your parenting. That's why you hear us say a lot, do things with your kids, because you're going to get to know them in a variety of different situations and circumstances, and you'll get to know who they are. And so when they are trying to do I want more. You've got a better beat on that. And they've got a better beat on you. Okay, that didn't work then, and so this probably won't work now.
That's the long-term outcome we're aiming at.
Yeah. So there's a lot of good stuff there. And we talked a lot about some different parenting tools, different things. And those are all found in our manual that you can go to empoweringchoices.community, and you can find that. And if you did enjoy this, we'd love to hear in the comment section. You can put some of your struggles or things you've dealt with in the area of tantrums and meltdowns, and we'll see you on the next episode.